So when I walked into the facility where she was residing, she looked up and she saw me enter the room. And with her typical low-key demeanor, without a hint of surprise, she said, "Well, everybody's here." It was exactly the reaction I was expecting. I'd spent much of the flight from my home in Virginia scribbling down notes, my memories of her in my notebook. And I found myself focused largely on the summers of my childhood when I would visit both my grandparents at her beloved farm. Those are my favorite memories, as those trips were always a welcome change from the very different world I was growing up in the outskirts of San Francisco. Those memories include scenes of wandering the farm, exploring the outbuildings, chasing the cats, playing with the dogs, strolling out to the pond, and of course exploring the nooks and crannies of her farmhouse. Years later, I learned that my grandmother was always worried that I would be bored while I was at the farm. Far from it, Grandma. In fact, my times with you and with Grandpa were some of my most cherished childhood memories. Of course, my most favorite memories of my grandmother revolve around the day-to-day of life on the farm during my visits. Those include walking with her to feed the cats, watching her tend that garden that produced the best tomatoes I'd ever tasted, and most importantly, preparing the food. She would call me to dinner, which I considered lunch, or supper, which to me was dinner. I found it so endearing when she would utter what to me was her personal, all-purpose exclamation of quiet disapproval of the foolishness of others. "Good land," using that elongated speech and the sweet nasally voice of hers. It was an expression that embodied her no-nonsense understanding of the world, but was wrapped in her personal humility. I also remember sitting next to her in church. She would sit there quietly during the sermon, quietly respectful of the minister. But when it came time to sing those hymns, she would sing them loud. And hearing her singing skills made me appreciate all the more her faith in God and her faithfulness to Him. Now, this was my childhood memory of my grandmother, a sweet, humble, church-going farm wife and mother who raised a good family. This vision would sometimes carry into my adulthood. Years later, as a father of two girls living in Virginia, I would sometimes call her just to say hi or catch up, or to thank her for a Christmas gift or a present gift, and those phone calls always would follow the same formula. I would say, "Hi, Grandma," and she would instantly ask me about the weather in my hometown. And then she'd instantly move into the weather down around in Eudora. And then she'd fill me in all sorts of details about her life before going, "Well, I'm glad you called. I love you." I just have to scramble up to get in my thank yous, right? The reason I was calling. Followed the same formula when my daughters would call her to thank her. And they would have to rush and scramble to get in their thank yous too. Grandma was generous with all three of us, but she certainly never craved and never sought the gratitude she deserved, even when we were trying to give it to her. But when I would actually reflect, I came to see a person with much more depth and much more strength than I had appreciated or realized before. This was a woman born 2 months premature, 3 to 4 pounds, fitting easily in the palm of the hand of her father. Yet she quickly got to the task of growing up, succeeding in school, and then paying it forward by teaching the next generation of Eudora children in that sometimes cold, sometimes hot, one-room schoolhouse. This is a woman who dislocated her knee while working in the farmhouse after slamming it into a table. Called her husband to go snap it back into place so she could get back to work. When her oldest son, Larry, my father, sawed a tree branch that came crashing down painfully on her head as she worked in the yard, she had brief words of admonishment for him and got back to work. When her youngest son, Daryl, my uncle, carelessly and accidentally hit her in the head with a baseball while he was playing while she worked in the garden. She had a well-deserved word for him, too. And got back to work. And I'm sure her daughter Connie did something equally careless, prompting a similar reaction. But Connie's not talking. And Grandma was too tough to complain about it to anyone. So Connie, you're off the hook. Anyway, many decades later, she continued to show that strength. So when I last saw her about 7 weeks ago at her assisted living facility, she may have been moving a bit slower than any time since she had learned to walk. But as an otherwise healthy 97-year-old, she ranked as one of the longest living people in the entire history of humanity. So I can tell you firsthand, she may have been understated, mild-mannered, humble. She was strong. My grandmother did not project strength like many in today's world who try to show strength in search of adulation, who demand respect from crowds they'll never meet. Rather, she, in her humble way, strove simply to do the right thing by her family and by God, despite obstacles from the very first seconds of her life. And in this way, she earned the respect and admiration of those who were blessed enough to know her. So, Grandma, thank you for teaching your children about humility and the difference between right and wrong, and for showing them how to press forward quietly to do the right thing without seeking the spotlight. These are the characteristics that I try to emulate and teach my children, your great-grandchildren. This humble legacy, this humble strength is your legacy to me. So thank you, Grandma. I was blessed to be your grandson, and my daughters are blessed to have you as their chief. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Gabriel, daughter of Daryl Gabriel, Jean's youngest. My grandmother and Gabriel lived in 90 years. The last face-to-face conversation I had with my grandmother was in early April. Essentially, I thanked her for being a good mother and grandmother. She mentioned she was happy that she and my grandfather were able to educate their children. She felt an education was essential to success and was proud of being able to provide that. I understood her pride, yet I told her that education was just a tangible accomplishment. What I told her I thought she should be even more proud of were the intangible accomplishments. Those intangibles include raising a son, my father, who has values and a strong moral compass. My father is a reflection of his upbringing, as he is the best man I know, a good father, husband, and provider. There is no educational diploma, degree, or piece of paper that will hold water to those intangibles. I was also proud to thank her for embracing my mother during my mom's teenage years, when my mom had tumultuous times and felt very much alone in the world. My grandmother and grandfather consistently welcomed her into their home and helped to provide a stable foundation for my mom during a very challenging time in her life. And for this, I am eternally grateful for my grandmother. My grandmother was a woman of few words, especially when it came to overt displays of emotions. So in response to my sentimental declaration, she thanked me, smiled, and kindly dismissed the conversation. But I know she heard me. It was during this last visit with her that I pondered the legacy my grandmother was leaving behind. Her children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren are scattered throughout the world, positively impacting society. My grandmother had many solid values, including but not limited to humility, grace, kindness, and faith. She lived by the golden rule of treating others how you want to be treated. She loved her church, Hesper Friends, which is a small rural church that was always embracing of me and had such positive energy. No matter how diverse each of her family members were, she treated us all with respect and care. We took various paths and live in different locations and have made unique life decisions, yet we always seem to end up at my grandmother's door. Her core foundational values were passed down to me and others in the family. Her legacy, one of high moral character and integrity, being passed down throughout the generations, is so much more important than any material thing that has been accumulated. Every time I visit Eudora, the town where my grandmother was raised and lived for nearly a century, I feel grounded. Eudora, in large part because of my grandmother, is my roots. The feelings my grandmother's home elicits in me are nostalgia, warmth, and serenity. The farm where my father grew up is truly home in my heart. I developed my love of animals, especially cats, at the farm, and that is due to my grandmother. Eudora, the farm, my grandmother's lessons will stay with me no matter where life leads me. In essence, my grandmother fostered a legacy in which no matter what roots, R-O-U-T-E-S, I take in life, my roots, R-O-O-T-S, are firmly grounded here in Kansas. I love my grandmother immensely. I will miss her. She had a wonderfully long and quality-filled life. She had a great husband, an unshakable faith, an elephant's memory that is unmatched, a palpable kindness, and lots of family and genuine friends. I believe she is in a better place and has been reunited with her husband and countless friends and family who have passed before her. Grandma, thank you for all you gave me and my family. Your legacy will live on through us and through everyone you impacted. Rest in peace. I love you.